And as someone from the United States, I mean, what we get in the U.S. is really just an avalanche of incessant propaganda against Venezuela and its elections, which is what we see with just about any country that the U.S. deems a threat or as a, quote, enemy. Same thing they do with Cuba, Nicaragua, Iran, Syria, and what have you. You know, U.S. imperialism has had Venezuela in its sights for some time. And so the image that we get in the U.S. is one of a blood-soaked, a sadistic, blood-soaked dictator. Today, Nicolas Maduro, but when Chavez was alive, these were allegations that were levied at him, which of course were completely baseless. And so in the minds of the American people, when you have this evil sort of comic book villain type of leader, they'll believe anything negative that you say about them, right? If they say that the president is starving the people or keeping medicine from the people, or, you know, if there's like military repression, sort of arbitrarily, we'll believe it with no evidence because of how aggressive the propaganda is, and that extends to the elections. Now, the U.S. likes to believe and tells the world that it is the most thoroughgoing democracy on this planet, and it uses its elections as an example. But you know, there are 50 states in the U.S., and what a lot of people outside the U.S. don't know is that whenever we elect a president, that there are basically 50 different elections that happen. Each state has its own process for voting for president. And what we see in Venezuela is the complete opposite. In the U.S., the ruling class very purposefully puts obstacles to people so that they can vote. They outlaw things like mail-in ballots. They change around polling hours. They make it illegal for people to do things like pass out water in the lines. So there's actually an ongoing effort to disenfranchise people in the United States, especially Black and Latin voters, you know, coming from the right wing. There's a racist voter suppression campaign that has been going on really for several decades that the liberals in the U.S. have done nothing at all about. And so when we look at a country like Venezuela and we hear Venezuelans talk about how important democracy is to them, and we hear them talk about how important elections are to them, there aren't just words. We see it manifest in reality. And the thing that stuck with me most today is hearing one of the presenters talk about how every election they learn lessons. They don't claim that the process is perfect. They simply say that every time they have an election, they learn something new, and they use that to improve it for the next time. But this is what happens when you have an election happening within the context of a Bolivarian revolution, which is rooted in the conditions of the poor and working, oppressed, and exploited classes in Venezuela. And so the elections and the whole concept of democracy is rooted in the interests of the masses, whereas in the United States, the elections, just like everything else, is designed for the interest of the wealthy elite. So there's two ruling parties in the U.S., the Republicans and the Democrats, and only the wealthiest, most well-connected bourgeois figures are even allowed to run for president. Every election cycle in the United States, the record for money spent on the campaign is broken. Every cycle, more and more, millions and millions and millions of dollars are going just to elect this or that representative of the U.S. capitalist class. That's money that could be going to end hunger. That could be money to go to affordable housing. That could be money that could go to having free health care. All this money and resource for all of was basically a pageantry, a dog and pony show. Instead of being used for human needs, it's being used for this obscene ritual that only undermines the interests of the masses. So when I say that elections in the U.S. and elections in Venezuela are polar opposite, it isn't just that. It's clear who the real suppressor of democracy is, and it's clear where the real dictatorship is. And I would argue that the real dictatorship is the dictatorship of capital in the U.S. And we see that in the elections and really in every other facet of society.